Episode 156 of the 4x4 podcast is brought to you by Artemis Overland Hardware. Artemis Overland Hardware is a family business with a huge selection of overland equipment in stock for online orders, or you can visit the showroom located in Springfield, Missouri. Either way, Artemis Overland Hardware will get you equipped and ready for all your adventures, wherever they may take you.
You're listening to the 4x4 podcast, the podcast all about four-wheeling, overlanding, off-road racing, and the outdoor lifestyle. We talk about news, tips and tricks, answer your questions, and interview big and little names in the off-roading world. So whether your rig is busted and you're in the shop wrenching on it, or you're on your way to the trail, join us and we'll keep you plugged in on topics to help you get away. Here are your hosts, Dan, Craig, and Rich.
Well, hello, gentlemen. How you doing today?
Pretty good. How are you?
Doing well. Craig, how you doing?
Doing pretty good.
Good. I used some really good coffee in the coffee pot this morning. It is some Ravens Brew double caffeinated.
Uh-oh.
Feeling real good.
You kind of look like you're vibrating over there.
That is, in fact, not the internet making the screen shake. That's me. Well, on today's episode, really excited. Had a really fun interview a while back with Mike Hallmark from Hellwig Products. And you may know Hellwig from all their cool SEMA trucks. And if you head over to the show notes for this episode, the 4x4podcast.com/156. You'll be able to see some of those. And, of course, have all the links to the discussion there where we're talking sway bars, helper springs, airbags. And they got a really cool video that actually shows you how a sway bar works. And this was a really great discussion, especially because I have been the bad example. I have had no sway bars on my Jeep for a long time. And I aim to change that after this interview. So, without any further ado, let's go ahead and get to that interview with Mike Hallmark from Hellwig Products. Tonight on the podcast, I'm really excited to have Mike from Hellwig Products. How are you doing today?
I'm good, and yourself? Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Hey, I'm glad to have you. Really interested in learning about Hellwig Products and everything that you guys offer. And I will be the first to admit I actually have 0 sway bars on my Jeep Cherokee, and you can tell me why that's an awful thing, and I'll probably correct that at some point. But before we get to that, can you tell me a little bit about yourself and some of your background in off-roading?
Yeah, not a problem. My name is Mike Hallmark. I'm the marketing and international sales manager for Hellwig Suspension Products. This was a natural fit for me. Mainly, I grew up in the desert, so I born and raised Lancaster, California. Before I could walk, my dad was an avid bird dog trainer, mainly German Shorthair pointers. So I was out climbing hills and in 4-wheel drive vehicles from day one. I think I drove my first 4-wheel drive vehicle probably around like age 9 or 11 when my dad got our 72 Suburban stuck in a ditch. And it was right by Kelso Valley on the way out to Lake Isabella, and we had to stack some fallen Joshua trees underneath the right rear, and my dad was doing the pushing and I was doing the driving. And so from there it's been on. I got into air-cooled Volkswagens at like about 12, and that's never died, but realized I like being in the dirt, so had a Mazda B4000, so essentially a 94 Ford Ranger that I beat to death, and then took a break for a while, and then keeping with the problematic underpowered oil dripping electrical problem vehicles, I got around in the early 2000s, I got a 96 Land Rover Discovery that I've had for 16 plus years. Just Motor Mavens just did a feature on it. It's a beat up old disco, but yeah, gone anything from overlanding to go beat it up, rock crawling. Successfully completed the 50th anniversary Baja 1000 in a Class 8 truck.
No way! Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks.
Quite the feat.
That was an experience. It was one of the best and worst times of my life. And if I got the phone call tomorrow, I'd do it all over again.
Sure. Well, so for some of the folks that aren't as plugged into the different classes on a Baja vehicle, what is the Class 8? Can you describe that?
Class 8 is a couple classes, and don't quote me on this because I'm not a Baja expert, but it's a couple classes under a trophy truck.
Sure.
The main thing is you have to use the factory frame of the vehicle, and you have to use a factory engine that was offered, like a factory displacement.
Okay.
So we used a Ford F-150, or late 80s, early 90s F-Series truck. Since some of those came with larger 390 460s, we're able to run a larger motor in it. Really no limitations on suspension. So we ran full King coilovers all the way around. It's not as close you can get to a trophy truck without spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, but it was definitely at least $150,000-$180,000 race truck, all privately funded by DSM Motorsports, Dean Schliemann Motorsports. And it was all just standard working class guys and the team putting in their efforts to build the truck, spec it out. And luckily, majority of the team was either engineers, so they're all very detailed oriented. Then the others were in the industry or mechanics of some sort. So very knowledgeable team. And then the truck was built very well. And I mean, that's a grueling race. I believe it's over a 50% attrition rate. If you can finish the rate, that's something to talk about. So
yeah, I got to be a co-driver in a Class 7 truck back in 2012, and we did not finish. We were one of those that attrited. I replaced a fuel pump and 2 rear ends out on the race course before we finally, ground off all the teeth in the rear end and could not make progress anymore.
Yep. Oh yeah, you gotta keep going on, adapt and overcome. It's you gotta figure it out. We had our issues, electrical issues. I was the third seat in the car. I nabbed as well. Unfortunately, I didn't have the pocketbook to be a driver. But when the truck left the starting line, perfect condition. By the time it got to us, I had no GPS. Comms were down. We had glitchy electrical system. And then about 68 miles out of the finish line, the engine just died. We did a quick diagnostic, and basically distributor wasn't turning. So we pulled the oil plug in the valve cover and made sure that the rockers were still moving. That told me that the cam was still intact, the drive gear was still intact, so it could only be the distributor. So we pulled that out, and sure enough, the distributor drive gear, which was a brass item, which is a wear item, failed.
Yeah.
Luckily, we had another one on Chase 1. In about 45 minutes, it came out. We got it buttoned up and headed off to the finish line again.
And finished. That's outstanding.
And finished with, I think we had 4 minutes, 4 minutes and some odd seconds to finish. We were the official last finishers of the 50th Baja 1000.
Well, that's awesome.
Which they used to give a prize for it. I forget what it's called, but yeah.
Yeah, we've got one of the guys that's been listening to this show and supporting us for a long time is Matt Frick, does Camp 4 Low Baja tours, and I was geared up, ready to go down to Baja before all this coronavirus stuff hit and kind of ruined a bunch of plans. So if it's not one thing, it's another. But...
Right. No.
Well, let's start to transition here. Can you tell me a little bit about what Hellwig Products offers and some of the history there?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, first and foremost, we are a solutions company. 1944 is where the concept came up for Hellwig helper springs. Due to the war and lack of steel, the business didn't start till 1946, but it's all inventions out of necessity, essentially. So ownership at the time, or I guess pre-ownership at the time, noticed that a lot of sedans on the road had what I like to call the saggy bottom blues. Back ends were sagging because the springs were wore out. They just had a lot of weight in it. And at the time, pickup trucks weren't really prevalent. They weren't as big as they are today. So they would make helper springs in the garage on the weekdays, and on Saturday, Rudy and Don Hellwig would go knock on people's doors and offer to install the Hellwig helper spring in their driveway for $7. Just a classic knock, knock, knock. How you doing? I'm a helpful Hellwig helper spring guy. You got the saggy bottom blues. I can fix that for $7. Let's do it.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, so this is 74th year in business. We're 4th generation family owned. The company originated in Kansas, moved out to Southern California in the Valley, and then moved up to Visalia, California, which is the gateway to the Redwoods or the Sequoia National Forest. So that's where we've been manufacturing for several decades now. And we are a load and sway control specialty manufacturer. So we offer steel helper springs that provide a higher level load capacity for pickups and SUVs primarily. We offer airbags that also solve that problem. And then we do sway control. So front and rear sway bar for truck applications. We do front and rear sway bar for car application. Anything from 1965 Volkswagen Beetle all the way up to huge freight liners and fire trucks we offer product for.
Okay. Well, let's start going through some of the product line here. And I think most people are probably most familiar with a sway bar, but they might not fully understand, kind of what it does, how it functions, because it looks pretty simple. It's just a piece of metal, a bar that's kind of shaped to link in, but may not fully understand that. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, in the simplest form, without trying to get technical on it, a sway bar is two levers that act in opposition to bring themselves back to the same plane. So if you had a paper clip, you unfolded it, and you put it in a U, and you try to twist the ends up and down, and you feel that pressure, that's what a sway bar does. It's trying to bring that back to parallel. So the sway bar would mount, the transverse section would mount either at the body or on the axle. Then the arms come out, and those tie in to the body or the axle via end links. And as you go around a turn and the body wants to roll outwards, the sway bar just keeps it from rolling or limiting its roll. Most people with cars, especially that come from a road race background, know the value of sway bars. They understand it. They wouldn't go do a track day or shoot a canyon without a sway bar. You absolutely need it. When it comes to trucks, and I'm going to specifically target out 4x4 off-road guys.
People like me.
And people like me. I did it for years. The misconception of a sway bar ruining your off-road vehicle is still prevalent in the marketplace, because most guys, they get their four-wheel drive vehicle, they get it home, they already have their list in their head of everything they're doing. We're modifying.
Oh, yeah.
When this thing's, I just bought it, and I'm going to the dealership to buy a brand new car. I already know the list of mods that are going on. And usually, as soon as somebody gets that vehicle home, boom, here comes out the wrenches and the gun. They're pulling the sway bar off because it limits your articulation off-road. It ruins the off-road experience. Sway bars that are out today, sway bars that we engineer, we are mindful of these characteristics. So specifically to call out the vehicle that saved the off-road aftermarket, or the aftermarket in general after 2008, the JKG, the JKU,
oh, yeah.
the four-door Jeep. For that, we do a front and rear sway bar that it turns your wet cardboard box of a Jeep into a primed race car. So what it does is, with a larger diameter sway bar, it helps to limit that body roll. So that means at highway speeds, 70 miles an hour, you're very stable. Crosswinds, you feel stable. On and off freeways, going through, like, the cloverleaf, getting on the freeway, you don't have to crawl on that anymore, or make everybody feel like the truck's gonna tip over. That solves that. Now, everybody so far has heard me talk is going, yeah, cool, but what happens when I hit the dirt? What happens when pavement ends and what I really want to do starts? For those vehicles, our front sway bars actually disconnect. Okay. So you pull a couple pins off the end links from the axle, you take those off and then flip them, and we have tabs that mount in the inner wheel well, and you put those end links right back on there. You drop the pins in, and you don't have to worry about, where did I put the end link? Where did I put the pin? Everything stays in a package on the front end. Now you can go hit the trails and you have full articulation. You don't lose any articulation up front. Rear sway bar out back, you leave it connected. Don't disconnect it. You're still going to get your articulation. Certain applications, like a Toyota Tacoma, obviously it's a very popular off-road vehicle, and very popular in what's not new, but people are just finding out about, a thing called overlanding.
Once you give it a name, people start to pay attention to it.
Well, yeah, it was like, have you heard about this new thing called overlanding? And I was like, oh, yeah, my grandpa did it. He called it car camping. And my forefathers did it in covered wagons with oxen. I think they called it manifest destiny. But yeah, I've heard of overlanding.
Exactly.
But but when it comes to those and those Tacomas, we've actually done testing with factory Toyota with factory sway bars, no sway bars, and our sway bars. And specifically on that platform, you don't lose any articulation.
Interesting.
Now,
do you think that's a characteristic of it being the independent suspension versus a solid axle, or is it something else?
There's several things that come into play. Yes, it has to do with the factory suspension and the geometry that's there. The testing we did it on was a modified Tacoma that had a lift on it. So when I say factory, I don't mean as it rolled off the lot, but It had about a 3-inch lift. So front end geometry also what comes into play is the specific diameter of that bar. The length of the arms. Our sway bars on that application are actually 3-way adjustable. So they have 3 different mounting points on the sway bar that changes the stiffness. Because going back to the theory of a sway bar being 2 levers in opposition, the further you mount those holes out, the more mechanical advantage the vehicle has over the lever. The further you go in, or the shorter that lever is, the less mechanical advantage. So the stiffer it'll be, or the less body roll you'll have.
Yeah, I always try to explain it as like it's a torsional spring that doesn't want to be twisted. It just wants to return to that neutral position that it started in.
Totally, exactly. And the longer you put the longer the arms are, the longer you get away from that cross section, the more advantage you have and more body roll you'll have. Sure. But on the Tacoma, just a few key things that play in on why you didn't lose it. There's definitely other applications where we make larger diameter sway bars where yes, it is going to limit the off-road articulation, but that depends on make, model of vehicle, and also what you plan to do. And we also offer sway bars in different diameters depending on the type of driving or work you're going to perform in it.
Okay. Well, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, I know I have not I purchased my Jeep in 2004, and it had already been highly modified, and it had a sway bar with some extended links and everything, like thrown in the back. Is like intended to put on, never did. I ended up giving it away to my dad, and here it is a lot of years later, and I still haven't put a sway bar on. It's always on like the to-do list.
Right.
The daggone thing just keeps breaking down. Other things are taking priority.
Been there. Yeah. I drove my Land Rover with a 4-inch lift for probably a good 6-7 years. Just got used to it. Just understood how the vehicle felt. Yeah. And once I started working for Hellwig, they're like, well, we can't have that. I went to Easter Jeep Safari, I guess 5 years ago, and I took my Land Rover Discovery to Easter Jeep Safari to be the ugly duckling. And, and the thing was, hey, you can't go out there without our sway bar. So we bent up some bars and made some quick disconnects, and I would offer people rides. And what I would do is I would give them a ride in the vehicle with the sway bar on, and we'd drive around and we'd do stuff. And then I'd get out to go do something. And that's something that I would do without telling them is I would then disconnect the sway bars front and rear, and then we'd start driving again. And then they would just freak out. Actually, I had one guy tell me, like, whatever, man, I'll buy sway bars. Just don't do that to anybody ever again. Like this
never do that again.
Yeah. So, I mean, the number one feedback we get from people on our sway bars is the difference is night and day. Because it is that big of a difference on the effect, even over the factory sway bar, let alone not having any sway bars. So 100% factual truth, sway bars, if it's a large diameter, yes, it's going to limit your articulation. That's why on JKU Jeeps and that body style, we make them quick disconnecting because we can't get the best of both worlds. There's other manufacturers on the market that make sway bars that are for off-road use. Downside is they're typically a reduced spring rate, torsional spring rate than factory. So you have a sway bar for off-road, but you actually have more body roll on-road. Yeah. And let's face it, most people are driving their vehicles at best 80-20. 80% on the highway, 20% in the dirt. So my question from a off-road perspective, not a guy that's hustling sway bars, from an off-road perspective is why would you sacrifice your 80% for your 20%? Like there is a middle ground there.
Yeah, that's a great way to think about it. I think I'm probably the anomaly. Mine sits in the driveway from one day to the next, but on the weekends, it's all in the dirt. So, but even then, I've got some highway where I got to get there. It's not getting trailered out. And I like the fact that you're not compromising on one side to gain advantage. Because a lot of times when I look at all the different sway bars and they say, oh, no, it works great in both applications, I call shenanigans because you're going to compromise either on-road or off-road. But having the disconnect makes perfect sense.
Yeah, well, and there's always a trade-off. I mean, I'm quite sure you and the listeners are familiar with the term dual sport.
Sure.
And the idea is it's supposed to do both very well.
Yeah.
But the fact is it only does each about 50%.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're always getting a trade-off. So really, in these situations, if you can disconnect that front sway bar or your sway bar that is going to be the limiting factor in articulation, disconnect it. Once again, that's why Jeep listened to their customer base, and on their Rubicon models, they have a quick disconnecting front locker.
Yep.
So
one of the things that I hear about from some of my peers that do have sway bars is when they go to reconnect them, it becomes kind of a nightmare if you're not on perfectly level ground. Is that something that you guys have addressed?
Well, you can, with ours, it's not that it is much different than anybody else's. You want to get it as level as possible for it to perform properly.
Right.
So we call it quick disconnect. A lot of people confuse quick with slide on, slide off with your hand.
Yeah.
Nobody said it was an easy disconnect. And now it's not incredibly difficult. I just always keep a rubber mallet with me, where I use what I like to call the old soul hammer, which is the bottom of your foot, and a little bit of lube never helps. A little WD or something like that, you can slide it in. Yeah, definitely. You want to be on as level ground as possible, and if you can't, you can typically rock the vehicle back and forth to get it in place. To date, I have not been in a situation where I was pulling my hair out and gave up putting on a sway bar because it was so tough to hook up the two end links.
Okay, well, it will remain on my wish list of things that I need to put on here. But I love the idea of multiple mounting points. You can kind of tune the amount of leverage that sway bar is providing, giving you a little bit of options. That's super smart.
What year is your Jeep?
It is a 99 Jeep Cherokee 2-door with an 8-inch Skyjacker lift. So it is a significant lift, and I think that's probably why I never put it on there to begin with, is I didn't find links that I liked, kind of maintain the correct sway bar geometry. And I of course, made no attempt to fabricate anything up myself either.
Gotcha. Well, so, I mean, you are our prime candidate because anytime you lift a vehicle, you're doing one major thing, and that's you are raising the center of mass, essentially. Oh, yeah. So you're now more prone to body roll because your center of mass, your center of gravity is now elevated.
Oh, yeah. Now, if I ever handed the keys to anybody else, I would have to tell them, you have to slow down or your butt is going to be puckered so tight you're going to have seat surgically extracted.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and I get that a lot when I talk to people about sway bars. They're like, oh, I took mine off. It's lifted super high. Nobody makes anything for it. I'm like, well, that's funny because I do. I'm not the guy that builds it, but we do.
Yeah.
So one more time, you said yours was a Cherokee.
Yep. The actual Cherokee, not this new fangled Cherokee.
Yeah. I know the real stuff. The XJ.
That's right. It's a 99.
Okay.
The best year of Cherokees.
I will offer you the sway bar challenge. And I will even go so much as offering to send you front and rear sway bars for that, so you can do a follow up and call me out. And I'll even give you on this recording the guarantee that I love giving. I don't think ownership loves me giving, but it's the punch me in the face guarantee. And that is, if you put them on and they don't do everything I just said here to all of your listeners, you call me up. I'm not far from you. I will drive straight to you, and you can punch me square in the face.
Well, I promise you don't want to get punched in the face by me, but I will take that challenge.
I'm not good looking, and I can't afford to get any worse looking. So I have not anybody take me up on this. I have a customer in Australia that I gave this guarantee to 3 years ago. He flew over for SEMA, very tall, typical Australian guy. Comes over to the booth. He goes straight up to Mark and Melanie, our CEO and president, and said, "I'm looking for Mike." In a very stern voice. And they said, "He's right over there." Why? He said, "He was in Australia and he gave me a punch him in the face guarantee. if your product didn't work the way you said it did. And their eyes got really big because up until this moment, they didn't know about my guarantee.
Yeah, they're thinking you're going to get sucker punched in the nose.
Yeah, and so as their eyes get big, he then smiles and says, well, I'm here to tell you I'm not going to punch him in the face. I love your product. It works great.
Awesome.
So,
yeah, well, I'll take you up on that.
Okay.
Well, let's go on here because you got more than just sway bars. Tell me about the helper springs.
Steel helper springs, they're great because they are a set it and forget it application. They're great for several things. If you own a fleet of vehicles, blue collar worker, you've got a bunch of tools in the back, you're a plumber, you're an electrician, HVAC, you've got a service body on back and the back end sagging. Maybe you're a mobile welder and you've got a welder on one side and one side sags. You can correct it to that side. Also, you constantly tow or haul anytime the back end ride height is compromised by adding weight. Our steel helper springs are pretty much a no-brainer. No drilling required, no welding required. All the springs, the mounting kit, the bolts, the nuts, instructions, everything's included. I recently just did an install video on our 2019-2020 Ranger that took me start to finish, I think about 30 minutes said and done. And that was with taking a wheel off. Specifically on this application, you don't even have to take the wheel off. A lot of times on the helper springs, you don't even have to take the wheel off the vehicle. You can just slide it in the wheel well, and then you bolt it in place. And the other great thing about them is they're tunable. So you can actually tune the level of support you need by adjusting the outer tension on the springs. So there'll typically be two mounts that hold the spring close to the axle itself. And then there'll be two on the outside that actually give you the preload of the spring. So you actually adjust that preload by simply turning a wrench to get the desired ride height you're looking for or support you want. Going back to the scenario where I was talking about mobile welders, typically they'll have a welder on one side, or maybe they'll have one side of the vehicles that's heavier than the other. Yeah. You can add more preload to that one side to support that side over the other.
Huh. That's pretty smart.
So you can fine tune left side to right side. I actually have some fleet customers that will buy one kit. Like let's say they have 10 Ford F-350s. They will buy one kit to solve the problem on two trucks because they only have weight on one side.
Right.
So they'll put one spring both on the driver's side of those vehicles and they go down the road nice and level.
How about that? Now, is this something that changes the kind of the ride quality all the times or just when you've got the overload kind of the cargo on there?
So it depends on the vehicle and the spring that you go with. So we start from what we call our Easy 550, which has a level load capacity of 500 pounds. And that's typically on your mid-size trucks, your lighter stuff. And then once we get into the 1 ton and some of like the 450, 550 stuff, we do up to our LP35, which is a Load Pro 3500. So it's 3,500 pound level load assist. For some Ford and Dodge applications, we actually offer our contact helper springs that bolt on to the factory contact overloads that exist on the spring pack. Super easy install. And what that does is that engages the contact overload sooner and obviously has a higher spring rate. When you Easy 550 to our Pro Series and like our LP15 series, which is a 1500, LP15 is a 1500 level load. Pro Series is a 2000 to 2500 level load. Those are typically a progressive rate spring as long as they're multi-leaf. And those you really don't notice any difference in your ride quality because you're not being a progressive rate. They only come into play once things start.
Yeah, once you compress the spring.
Starts compressing.
Okay.
When you look at our LP25 and our LP35, those are all multi-leaf kits. You will start to see a harsher unladen ride quality. So if you don't have a lot of weight back there, you will notice a stiffer ride. But once again, you can adjust those and take some tension out as need be.
Now, is that is it so easy that, you're not going to be carrying a load for a while, you can go ahead and unload that pre-tension and soften up the ride? Or is that something you don't want to do very often?
Well, it depends on what tools you have, but per side of the vehicle, you're going to have 8 nuts total. You have 4 nuts, 2 front and rear, that actually set the tension, and then you have 2 locking nuts that butt against that. So if you want to change it, you undo the locking nuts, loosen those, then you loosen the tension nuts, and then lock it back down.
Okay.
what I tell the people, so a big market for us is slide-in camper trucks.
Yeah.
And in the overland community, and whether it's weekend warrior overland or the true overland person, which is the person that outfitted their vehicle to be their house, their shower, their kitchen, that they're going to go circumnavigate the globe in. We partnered with several overlanders, Turtle Expeditions. Gary and his wife, they've been all over the globe. They've run our helper springs everywhere. What I tell people in that situation, they prefer the steel springs over airbags because it's not prone to failure like an airbag is, because that's basically, it's a tire, it's rubber. It's going to do one thing. Eventually it will fail. That's going to happen. So people rely on steel when they need something that's dependable no matter what. When you're in the middle of nowhere and odds are people don't speak your language, if there's even people around to talk to.
Yep.
So those people, they're set it and forget it. The ones that are the weekend warriors that we get into the steel, what I tell them is once you have your tension set, go out with some electrical tape and wrap that setting on the top side of the adjuster. So you know that's your max setting. And then when you take the weight off, release the tension. And once you have that setting, go on the bottom side and wrap that with electrical tape. Okay. Now you know your relax and your tension points, and all it takes is some turns of a wrench, and you're to the setting that you need.
There you go. That makes a lot of sense. And it's not like it's a super easy job to slide in one of those big heavy campers anyways. If you're going to do that much effort, a couple more nuts adjusting to soften up the ride, that's easy.
Yeah, no, that's really easy. And it's depends on your needs. How heavy is the load that you're putting in it? A lot of times you don't need to go to our stiffest or strongest LP35. You could get away with like a Load Pro series or one of our Pro series, or you can go with like a LP25.
Very nice. All right, so now let's talk about airbags. Since you were talking about that, I've got the 2017 Ram 1500. It's got the air ride suspension on it, so I not the same as an air helper spring, but I've considered it for my Jeep. But I replaced the entire spring pack, so I think I got away without having to fix that one.
Gotcha.
So tell me about these airbags.
With everything, there's their pro. It has its pros and its cons. Air is great because you can manipulate the ride quality and or support needed by if you upgrade to an air compressor and a tank and switches, then you can actually manipulate in the cab. Something that we currently offer, especially for our slide-in camper guys, is what we call our auto level system. So we use a manual valve that you set the distance between frame rail and your rear axle. And if you put a lot of weight in and the back end sags, it senses that and it automatically brings you back up to that ride height.
Wow.
I've been running it on our promo vehicle, which was our 2016 Nissan Titan XD that we put a custom Lance camper in the back of. I've been running that hard for 3.5 years now. I bought it from the company. It's actually mine. I personally own it. We run it to Baja. We've run it to the bottom of the Grand Canyon several times. It's done some pretty stout off-roading for a truck with a camper in it, and I've never had one issue with the airbags or that air management system. When I take the weight out, it automatically relieves the air from the bags. When I put the camper in, it automatically pumps it back up.
You know what? As soon as you mentioned that, I remember seeing pictures of it, and we've talked about it here on the podcast.
Awesome.
That was a couple years ago, wasn't it, when you guys built that one?
Yeah, we did that for the 2017 SEMA show. So that was a brainchild of mine from, I don't know, it's been in my head for like 10, 15 years. And Hellwig gave me the opportunity to build it. And that's what we came up with.
It was yellow and black, right?
Yep. Yellow and black.
That's the one.
If you Google Hellwig Rule Breaker, that's what I'm talking about.
Awesome. Well, I'll make sure to have links to that in the show notes as well.
Yeah. So with that's running our big wig airbag. What separates us from some of the other names that are out there is it's a 2,800 pound bag per side. So you're looking at a 5,600 pound level load capacity. And that's still running an airbag or an air spring that's rated at 100 PSI. So because we have larger mounting plates, top and bottom for that airbag, and the actual bill of the bag being larger, it actually reduces the air pressure to require to hold the weight. So the old adage, no replacement for displacement, that holds true with airbags. So the more contact surface you have on top and bottom, what's actually holding that weight, you're now dispersing the load over a greater area. So we can get about a 40% reduction in air pressure as compared to like a 5000 series.
Got it.
So what that means is lower PSI, which translates to a softer spring rate, so you get a much more comfortable ride. The other upside to it, since it's a larger billow bag itself, we get much more articulation. We get almost 11 inches of travel from full compression to full extension out of the airbag.
Nice.
Which is what has allowed me to take it to the. If you're familiar with King of the Hammer, King of the Hammers. Are you familiar with the obstacle Chocolate Thunder?
I am very familiar.
You know the viewing area, the hill that everybody drives up to, and they view it. I take the truck with the camper on it to the top of that where it flattens out. And what I've done in years past is I get up there, I kick the awnings out, I bust out my barbecue, I get out some fine Ninkasi beer that they supply us to give away to people. And as long as you're of age and you're hungry, I give people food and beverages while they're hanging out at the race.
That's awesome.
And then so we can then talk to them. The number one question I get is, how the hell did you get this truck? How did you get here? Yeah, and I go, that's so crazy you would ask. Let me tell you all about Hellwig. Let me tell you about these airbags. Let me tell you about these helper springs.
That's pretty awesome.
So yeah, that's what's different about our airbags compared to some of the other ones. There's some other ones that'll hold like 7,500 pound level load capacity. Those are in a different class. They're about 150 to 200 psi rated airbag, which that means a higher spring rate. And what we're trying to offer is the most comfortable ride we can, because our bread and butter when it comes to that lifestyle is that slide-in camper. And let's face it, most people that have a slide-in camper, they've lived the hard life, they're retired, they want to live the easy life, and so they're looking for the comfort.
Sure. That makes a lot of sense. Beforehand we were talking about Army trucks and all the ones that you've seen. I have seen these large trucks that have the airbags on them. I have personally witnessed in very close proximity a truck carrying over 2,000 gallons of fuel and an airbag grenades. And that'll stop your heart. So
yeah, that's a big boom.
I don't know how much air pressure was in the thing when it grenaded, but wow.
Yeah. Well, you're talking about military vehicles. I'll segue into the bill we did 2 years ago. Now, I guess. Are you familiar with our operator?
I don't think I am, but I'm going to Google it.
Google Hellwig operator. It's a 2017 Ford Super Duty, done tan digicamo, and we designed that to haul a side-by-side on the back, because here in the lovely state of California, you can't tow anything over 55 miles an hour. And
miserable.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can't drive 55. So so we partnered with some key people, and we did a super slick custom deck made by Sherp Tech that goes over the bed of the truck like a bed cover, and then we put a matched painted Arctic Cat Wildcat side by side on top, and that's how we went all over.
Nice. Yeah, I've seen the pictures here. That is a really sweet looking truck. Love it.
And we partnered with 511, so we did a full interior with that. We did molly. And I'm speaking this to you because you're a military man. So when I did this one, it was totally geared towards that. I put molly webbing anywhere I could that made sense. So the back seat flips up. It's all molly webbing. It has all your pouches for your meds, for any tactical gear, gloves. The front bolster of the seats I did, so that way I could put my winch controller there, glove holder, all that stuff. Really, we were just trying to make it tactical and functional.
Sure. Well, if you bought the other truck, who bought this one? Where is this now? And how can I get my hands on it?
We still have it. And unfortunately, all of our marketing vehicles live at my house since I work remote. And I'm not that far from you. So if you want to come out and check it out and take it for a spin, you're more than welcome to.
Awesome.
Which then, the joke is that I have more equity on my driveway than my driveway's worth.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Right, yeah. And so then that build, that's running our bigwig airbags out back, and it's running my sway bars front and rear. And we built that once again because we want to tout how you control a load that is that high off the ground and that much. Because we've got a 4-inch lift Icon lift on it. I'm running 37-inch Falcon tires, and I've got roughly 2,000 pounds, almost 6 feet in the air. So typically that'd be a lot of body roll, but with our airbags and sway bars, you don't even know it's there. To Moab 2 years ago, I have a 47 CJ 2A Willys Jeep. So just post era Jeep. And we actually put that on top of the truck. And I drove to Moab with that on top of the truck and flat towed a JKU Jeep behind it.
That's incredible.
And with the sway bars and the airbags, the truck didn't even know it was there. Man. And then I've had that thing off road as well, to where it's still capable. It's still capable with the big wig rear sway bar that we have on there. It's an 1.5/16 inch diameter. It's a pretty large sway bar. It does limit some of the articulation, but that truck there, I'm not trying to get into any tight spaces. Matter of fact, I've been given the strict guidelines of you're not taking that Moab, you're not taking any crazy off-roading.
Yeah.
But yeah, and the hardest thing for us as a company, manufacturing suspension products, is nobody once has ever come up to me and said, "Man, that is a cool sway bar," or "Man, that's a sexy airbag right there. Look at those helper springs. I love those helper springs."
Yeah, you kind of build an unsung hero component here.
Yeah. So we build these kind of over the top marketing vehicles, so people will come over and go, "Hey, what's going on here?" And then I always laugh and say, "Hey, it's all a ruse, man. It's all a guys. You came all the way over here just so I can tell you about sway bars, helper springs, and airbags. So let's get into it."
Well, that's awesome. Well, you might not want to talk about it, but I'm going to still squeeze you anyways. You got anything cool coming up or any special projects lined up for the next build for Hellwig?
Well, I'll talk about our latest one that we did.
Okay.
For the 2019 SEMA show, we did a 2019 Ford Ranger, because they brought that back out in 19. And in the same fashion of our problem solution heritage, and obviously my passion, which is more the off-road and overland lifestyle, we wanted to build a vehicle so we call it attainable adventure. We wanted to build a overland vehicle that's not a $250,000, $500,000 overland vehicle that when you think of the like Earth Roamers or stuff like that they're great vehicles, but it's always boy, it must be nice, or boy, I wish one day. Yeah. The idea with the Ranger was show people that you can start with a mid-sized platform and build something really nice. Now, admittingly, being a SEMA vehicle, you can't go to SEMA. If any of their listeners aren't familiar with SEMA, it's the world's largest car show. It's where all of the aftermarket automotive goes to showcase their new product and just how far you can go with the vehicle.
Yeah, it's a car show turned up to 11.
Yeah, exactly. So when you're building an attainable vehicle, you also can't roll to SEMA on a Walmart budget. So you gotta bring some heavy hitting stuff. So topped out, said and done, the truck's value built is right around $80,000, which is a little high for a vehicle build, but in the spectrum of an overland vehicle, very much attainable. So we took a stock Ford Ranger. We did a Icon 3-inch lift on it, some Falcon 34-inch tires, which are pretty darn big for that truck. We put a whole bunch of stuff in it, knowing that once we added all this weight, which is right around 1,000 pounds, the back end was going to sag. Have the saggy bottom blues. I got a no saggy bottoms policy. Can't have that. And with that extra weight, it's going to feel like Big Booty Judy on the dance floor. Like, it's going to move around. So we've got to fix that with the sway bar. So the idea with any of these builds is we've got to make it have these problems that we fix, but also do it in a very pleasing way. So with the Ranger, my idea with that was attainable adventure for two. So it's equipped to take two people out and support two people for up to 2 weeks at a time, not needing anybody or anything. So it has a Tepui tent on top. We've got an HD Yakima rack that carries water jugs and a Crazy Beaver shovel, Goal Zero Yeti 1400 generator that gets, or I call it a generator, it's a power pack. Sure. That gets charged while we're going down the road. Solar panels to power that, a full trails kitchen that comes out, ARB freezer fridge. We've got Rockford Fosgate speakers in it, so specifically in the bed, so you can listen to music. It's everything you need. It's a house on wheels, and when it's all closed up, it looks like a pretty Ranger. It looks pretty good.
Oh yeah.
Then you just star pulling things out, like the bed slides out, and then the kitchen slides out, and then the table comes out. And then I've got specialized Levo turbo electric bikes that are on it. So you and your girlfriend can go out and use the bikes, use the power assist, and when the batteries are drained, you hook it in to the Goal Zero system. It charges overnight, and while you're out camping, the solar panels and you're enjoying stuff charge that battery. You've got about 9 gallons of water, and you've got plenty of dry goods because of the Pelican case. So it's set up to where you can just flat out disappear for 2 weeks at a time and not have to deal with anyone.
Yeah, I'm looking at the pictures that Autoblog posted about this, and that looks like a sweet truck. I could definitely get down with that.
Yeah, it came out good, and it's not, at least in my mind, also that no mother has an ugly child. So, in my mind, when everything's buttoned up, it looks like a nice painted truck with some stuff in the back.
Sure.
But once you start opening it up, I'm just gonna have to get like the transformer noises tuned to the stereo. So, yeah, exactly. Because everything comes out, and all of a sudden you have everything you need. It's got a perfect work triangle for your cooking. Expedition Essentials, they gave us a what they call their Exo Table Light, which is great. It's a small package. It folds out. You've got your prep area, and then it has a slide out where you can put your grill or your burner. It's a real fun. It's a real fun tool to have that truck. It's a real
slide
Swiss
outs
Army.
on top of slide outs on top of slide outs.
Exactly.
Well, that's awesome. Well, if somebody wants to learn more about Hellwig Products, where would you have them go?
They can always go to our website, which is hellwigproducts.com. Anybody listening, be sure to follow us on Facebook, Hellwig Products, or Instagram, which is Hellwig_products. We're always posting cool stuff. Really, no matter what your listeners are into, we support you. Literally, we support your journey. So if you're into old muscle cars, new muscle cars, we have sway bars for that. You're into four-wheel drive, you're into off-road trucks, you like trucks with Chicago deep dish wheels on it, 24s that are 3 feet wide. That's cool, man. You lifted it. You're going to need some sway bars. You're going to need some helper springs or some airbags. So.
Sure. Well, Mike, I really appreciate you coming on here and talking about everything Hellwig, especially convincing me that I really do need a sway bar on my Jeep, no matter what I think. I probably just don't know how bad it actually is once I get in something else or get the sway bar on it.
Well, I'll give you to up the challenge even. I'm gonna bait you now. I got the hook out. I will submit the order. I will have them shipped to my house. You have a free weekend. You come out. I'll even help you install them, and then you can drive the operator.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll even let you. I've got an old Willis Jeep you can drive. I've got an old Volvo C303 Swedish military vehicle. I mean, it's a rabbit hole, man.
I'm in.
You don't
as
know
soon
what you
as
will.
they open the front door of this long cul-de-sac, I'm out. I may have to sneak out the back.
There's got to be plenty of underground tunnels between Victorville and Lancaster, man.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I've gone a lot of places. From my house to /X Cafe, you're probably familiar with.
Yes, sir.
Covering that entire distance with only about 4 miles of pavement because I have to somehow get between I-15 and I-40.
Yeah.
So
somehow, you mean you prefer that route? I do. I like your story. Though.
Yeah, no, it's a great route. A lot of people out here don't realize what all is available, but Barstow, Victorville, like these are. Yeah. There's nothing out here but off-roading.
Yeah, you got Cal Baker Road. I mean, there's all kinds of little forgotten ghost towns and old gas stations and oasis resorts that people have driven by hundreds of times and have no idea that just on the other side of that foothill is something pretty cool.
Like Zizek's. Everybody passes the sign on their way to Vegas. They don't know what's actually out there. No clue. That is a real cool spot. And most people just argue over how you pronounce it. What is this word? Exactly. All right, Mike, thanks again for coming on the show. I'm looking forward to meeting you in person, whether it's on the trails or in your driveway. We'll figure it out.
Cool. Perfect. Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on.
We'll talk to you later.
Have a good one.
You're listening to a 4x4 Radio Network podcast.
Artemis Overland Hardware is a local family-run business that supplies your adventures. They have a brick-and-mortar store located in Springfield, Missouri, where you can come in and browse the huge selection of equipment. And when I say the selection is huge, I mean it's huge. Artemis Overland Hardware has a large chunk of the catalogs available from OzTent, 23-0, Easy On, Snowmaster fridges, one of the personal favorites, the Timbo Tusk, especially the Scottle, Covia, Frontrunner, Alucab, iCamper, Come Up Winches, Factor 55, Crazy Beaver Tools, National Luna, Red Arc, Ironman 4x4, and Goose Gear. This is not just a long list of reputable brands. Nope. Artemis Overland Hardware is all about building relationships. And relationships with the customers is absolutely important, and your satisfaction is only able to be guaranteed because of the relationship and trust that has been fostered between Artemis Overland Hardware and these brands. During this COVID-19 lockdown period, which is thankfully starting to come to a close, showroom's been closed, but ArtemisOverland.com is open for business and orders are shipping like normal. If you have any questions, then you can still call and talk to Aaron and his team there. Check out ArtemisOverland.com and get equipped and ready for all your adventures, wherever they may take you. That's ARTEMIS Overland.com. Check them out and hit them up on social media to say thanks for their continued partnership with the 4x4 podcast. All right, so we're on a good streak. It has not been that long since we actually got to sit down and talk here.
I know.
But
yeah, that's crazy.
It still seems like there's a lot going on in terms of upgrades. So, Craig, we're going to start off with you, and then Rich, we'll see what all you got going on.
Okay, well, what I got going on in the garage will be the new Vizio A129 Duo. I got myself a new dash cam for my new truck. I got a 2016 Dodge Durango. Decided that I was not going to get this with a four-wheel drive because the unit needed it for a commute vehicle too. It will tow my Jeep, so I'm good there. But decided I do need a dash cam because after my last accident, come to find out now, just this week, my lawyer contacted me and found out that they have two conflicting police reports.
Shocking.
that they're trying with the five different insurance companies that are trying to figure this out. They have one police report. My lawyer has a different police report. Yeah, so they're working out that. And luckily, the only thing that's on my side, nobody else had video. Nobody took video. Nobody took pictures. I was the only one that took video and pictures and had my dash cam because one of the reports says that I rear-ended someone and then I got rear-ended. Well, my video shows that I never hit anybody, so I'm protected. So I'm definitely, I went a little overboard. This A129 Duo camera by Vizio, I did some research. It's a really high-level camera. You can get. I went a little overboard with this camera because I paid $170 for it.
It does seem on the more expensive end of the dash cam scale.
Actually, it's in the mid-range.
Oh.
Most really good dash cams can go up to $400.
So what then is the difference between a $150 dash cam and a $400 dash cam?
Well, $400 dash cam, you're going to be in the HD, the 4K, the long memory. The $50 cameras, you're going to be in the range of memory card for between like a 15 and a 32. This one has a 256 availability for a memory card. You can't buy a $50 dash cam and put a bigger memory card in it, because they can only use a certain amount. They're only programmed to use a 32 or a 15 or an 8.
So is this something that you can move like from your Durango over to the Jeep if you're going to be going on the trail and get some good, trail footage like that, or is it not like that?
Well, this one will see. Now, I appreciate that question because I was going to bring that up. The camera I had in my car was one of the ones where you just stick it to the window with, a suction cup. Well, I realized during that video of that accident, when I got hit so hard, it knocked the dash cam off the window. Ooh. That's how hard I got hit.
That's legit.
Okay. And that was a legit hit. So I decided, okay, moving it from vehicle to vehicle, I decided with this new camera, this one's more of a sticky mount. So once I stick it in there, it's there. It's going to be in that vehicle until I decide to pry it off the window and then either reapply it with sticky to another vehicle. And after I'm going through all this bull with the lawyers and conflicting police reports, I decided there's no question I'm going to get a camera that faces front and rear because I got hit from the rear. And if my other camera, rear camera was working, if it was a better camera and it was working, we'd have video of me being hit.
Oh yeah.
So I decided to do a camera, one front, one facing back, solid mounted, so it will always be in that vehicle and I never have to worry about it. And after everything, once I get the Jeep up and running, I'm going to buy this exact camera and put it in the Jeep.
Nice.
So I'll have one in the Jeep and I'll have one. So that it'll be, I don't have to move them. I won't think about moving it. It'll always be there. So then boom, I'll always have this one, this type of camera. You can get a 250 gig card, which if you run it all day long will actually capture an entire day.
Wow.
The dash cam that I had in the car was only a 32 gig, and it will only cover probably 5 hours of the day, 4 or 5 hours of a day.
Yeah.
And that's for me, 4 or 5 hours a day. You got to understand. Now I moved that camera to my rig, so I'm using that the suction cup one in my rig, and it's only facing out the front. And I can't even get a full day out of it. If I get something and I see it, I actually have to pull that memory card out, put another one in, so I don't lose it because it automatically records over it. So it's one of those things. Is I was kind of upset about the different. As you get higher, you get more memory. Yeah. So they have this exact camera, but they have it's a Duo IR or RI, I can't remember, that has a 512 or something, a gig memory card. So it's almost 2 days worth.
Oh, geez.
Well,
that's good.
And that's about $580. So, and it's all HD, 4K, video. So yeah, I'll probably, for the Jeep, I'll probably actually even upgrade for the Jeep for that camera, but I'm going to get this exact camera, but with the bigger memory. So going on wheels, going on, a trail ride, I can use that video plus all my other cameras, my GoPros and stuff.
I'm looking forward to seeing some video from that camera just to kind of get a feel for how it does.
Yes. And I mean, I don't know how long it's going to take me to get this installed, because what I did was I got the wire pack with it, which costs a little extra, but you want to get the matching one. They have other ones where you can you wire it all up. It's not plugged into your cigarette lighter. It's hooked directly to the battery. This has a parking system. So it actually goes to the freeze frame.
Yeah.
So when you park your vehicle, and it has a motion sensor, so
it'll
when you're
start up
away
every time something moves in front.
Every time something moves, it'll take a freeze frame of that situation until you start driving again, and then it'll flip to regular video. And that's what sold me. So even though I'm not near my vehicle, if something happens, I still have some kind of photo or video of it. And I got the battery wire connector, so I can hook it straight to the battery. So there's no wires running down and running into a port in the vehicle that I'd like to use for something else.
Yeah.
And then it's like one of those plug and play things. And I guarantee you, it's one of those things you have in your vehicle, and when you don't need it, you don't think about it. But then right after you need it, you're like,
yeah,
I'm glad I have it. And right now, I am really glad when I have it, because now I'm dealing with, because of the mess up with my insurance company, and all that stuff that happened. It was just like crazy.
I tell you, the next big step is to get your Jeep actually driving, get it on the trails.
Yeah, I am. I came home yesterday, and the box with my new transmission is sitting there.
Oh,
so
that's a big step.
And I had to deal with getting new AC units and all that stuff installed in the house. So I decided wife has to go to work today because there was a break-in at her company.
Oh, geez.
And so, of course, she's the boss. So now she had to go down there and take care of it. So
nice.
I have the day to myself, so it looks like I'm
transmission day.
Well, clean up the garage so I can do the transmission. So it's unfortunate. There's snow, the snowball effect.
Yeah, one thing leads to another.
No, when something sits and then stuff starts getting piled on top of your project, now you need to clean all that shit off your project. And then by the time you're done doing that, you're too tired to do the project.
Yeah.
That's where I am.
All right. Well.
All right, Rich. How about you?
Speaking of cleaning things up.
Yeah, no projects on the vehicles because we're busy getting houses on the market, bought and sold and all that good stuff. So we got kind of a boom right now. So it's really a seller's market. So we're trying to catch in on this before all the more houses go on the market. So
yeah.
So we're busy doing home repair and painting and all the finishing work, making stuff look good. Well, we do have an update about my son's truck. We did that headliner project and did the seats. Well, we had a lot of lessons learned from it. Had some failure in materials, I think, was our big downfall. He went with probably not a higher quality blanket, and it really just started fraying real bad, both the headliner and the seat. Headliner started dropping. So lessons learned there was probably better adhesive. And I think the big one was I didn't spray both the headliner and the fabric.
Do you think the fabric was maybe too heavy to be kind of suspended from the ceiling like that?
Well, and that was one of my concerns too. I'm not so sure. It may very well have been, but because the fabric wasn't really all that high quality, just the woven style of it.
Yeah.
I think that allowed it to give away a little bit more.
Yeah.
So if it had been a little bit more tightly woven, I think that would have given us a fighting chance. But I think a better bonding agent and spraying both the headliner and the material probably would have helped out quite a bit. So,
Yeah, but you got to watch out for that because you might over, and then you got to over glue it.
Yeah,
and
have
then
the glue start showing through.
Start seeping through, not showing through, seeping through.
Oh,
Right. Well, you don't go crazy heavy.
Let's
with
not
the
get
glue,
carried away.
Yeah, I think spraying both the headliner and the fabric would have helped. And then all that work, the seats. Oh my God, the seats looked so good. All that work my wife did sewing the stuff, and then right around the headrest area it started to fray on them. So I know, but I don't know. We're gonna see if we can't make those last a little bit longer. So a little disappointing, but we learned a lot from it. So
well, I guess that's at least something. Some of the best learning lessons cost the most. I don't know where I heard that.
Luckily, this didn't cost that much. I mean, it all really cost us in time. Yeah, that was it. So
yeah. Well, I'm starting to tackle a project of my own that's similar to that. The right on the seat cushion bottom of my driver's seat was starting to tear. And I think what it is from me climbing in and then turning. Just that turning action has created enough stress in the threads that the fabric
where they usually were.
Yeah. Yep. So I went ahead and ordered some new the micro. It's not a microfiber, but like a suede fabric. So it's not real suede, but it's got that suede feel. And essentially that's the same thing that was on there previously. But I called. I don't remember if we talked about this, but I sent an email to Corbo. And it was going to be $180 to reupholster the entire seat. But if I wanted it to match the current color scheme, it was going to be a 12 to 14 week wait, which that's a significant number. So, I guess I could have just paid the $180 plus whatever shipping was going to be to send a seat back to Corbo. But I opted, since I'm a glutton for punishment and I like do DIY projects, I went ahead and ordered the fabric myself, and I'm doing it myself with some sewing coaching from my wife. And apparently my oldest daughter is a better seamstress than I am. So she's been coaching me.
Have her do it.
Yeah, well, she wasn't ready to do that. I volunteered her, and she said, "No way, Jose." So no luck there, but I am doing that. And so that's a good project that I can do in the evening when it's too dark to work on the Jeep outside. And since my Jeep doesn't fit in the garage easily, just due to height, that's a good project. But I've been getting after a lot of projects. Just this lockdown period has left me at home. My Jeep used to get, 3 weeks per gallon because I don't drive it a whole lot. I got that electric bike. But now, it's really getting some love since I'm not putting any fuel in the tank. So the big thing that I had to get after was the shackles. The revolver shackles that I've had in there forever finally just flat gave up. So I ordered the Iron Rock off-road shackles, and they've got I opted for the real rubber bushings, and this is something we'll talk about here in a little bit, instead of polyurethane, just because I've seemed to find that I can sacrifice the little bit of performance gain through polyurethane bushings for a more comfortable ride. And these were they say adjustable, but what it is the shackles have 2 holes, so you can, decide which lift height you want to get out of it. And I really don't need any additional lift. I kind of liked where it was riding, but the process of getting it in there was such a nightmare. Just because it's an older Jeep. As soon as I could get that bolt running through a hole, that's where it stayed. That's it. So I think my Jeep may have gained a half inch or an inch of lift out of the process, but I don't care. It's fine. All the drive shaft angles are still good. I don't care. It's in there. But what caused the big problem, and Jeep Cherokee owners may be familiar with this, usually it's where the leaf spring attaches in the front, that blind nut on the inside kind of spins free. But for me, it was in the rear. And so I'm going to try and explain this better. So Jeep Cherokees have a unibody, not a real frame, but there is something that looks like a frame that's attached to the body permanently. And where the rear leaf spring shackle attaches, there's a little box that sticks out from the outside of the frame rail, and you still can't access the inside of the box. It's all closed off by the body. And there is a nut that is welded on the inside of that box. So you loosen up the bolt, whereas usually you loosen the nut, and that bolt slides out from the shackle and the leaf spring comes free. And in my case, that nut had broken free. So I ended up having to cut a little window from the inside of the Jeep so I could get a wrench down in there and route it through the little hole to get the nut the rest of the way off so I could get everything out of the way. And then I found, due to I'm sure I'm not the only one that saves random hardware from all the other projects. So I had a nut that fit and an old bolt that also fit. And I used the bolt to capture the nut, pull it back into where it's supposed to go. And I borrowed a welder from a friend and re-welded that blind nut in place. There was a fair amount of grinding because I suck at welding. But it's in there. It stays. It's nice and strong. I was able to get it all put back together, and problem solved. I now have some nice new greasable, serviceable shackles from Iron Rock Off-Road, and by all reports, they make great shackles. And it's the boomerang style, so I get the good articulation that I still needed. I'm happy with it.
So is this what prompted the welder purchase?
Yeah, it was. Because, my wife she was super excited to come out and help, and I'm glad she did, because I would not have been able to accomplish this task by myself. Like, wrestling with a leaf spring and everything that's just a hair out of alignment it's a wrestling match. Jesus. When you watch these videos on YouTube, everybody's like, "Oh, just gonna burn the whole thing down and start from scratch." Like, I was getting close. And so then, I told her, like, we can fix this, but I need a welder. So I called a friend that I work with, borrowed his, and like I said, I know enough about welding to get a job done and be dangerous. And when she realized, like, legit, like, there's no way to finish this project without a welder, she said, "Okay, I know you've been wanting one forever. Birthday's coming up. Father's Day is right around the corner as well. Like, let's go ahead and just order one and call it that." It's done. So for anybody else that's looked at welders, there's a gajillion options. Like,
yep. What'd you end up going with?
So I went with the Forney, and I'd never heard of the brand before, but I looked at a bunch of different websites, and they all kind of said the same thing: is that this is it's a brand that's been around for a long time. They're headquartered in Colorado, I think Fort Collins. I think I saw it, and it performs really well. So I got a multi-process. It runs on the 110, regular house outlet, but it's a multi-process. So it does MIG, DC TIG welding, and stick welding, and it's good for up to 1/4 inch on a single pass. Well, I don't anticipate myself working on anything thicker than 1/4 inch. I don't know that there's anything on my Jeep that is thicker than 1/4 inch. And honestly, that's all I'm going to be working on for the most part. And, other assorted projects, but 1/4 inch is where it's at. And I'm sure we'll get some feedback. I hope we get some feedback to tell me I'm wrong and tell me why I'm wrong. But I'm okay. Yeah. And so the hard part was I wanted to try and future-proof the decision. I don't see myself doing a lot of TIG welding, but I would like to be able to weld on aluminum. Well, the problem is this is a DC-only welder, and everything that I've read says, TIG welding or welding on aluminum requires AC, the alternating current. But there's a website out there, weld.com. They do some really great videos, and they show that it is possible to do DC TIG welding on aluminum, but you have to use, I think it was 100% helium gas. So, I told my wife, like, hey, we could do this, but we'll need a lot of helium. said, "Oh, can we fill balloons too?" Like, yeah, sure. Of course you can.
You'll be able to fill a lot
A
of balloons.
lot of balloons. So if that's a selling point for her to let me to like be able to.
So she believed you. She actually believed you.
Well,
Okay.
you know, helium does fill balloons, and if this allows me, you know, I'll have to get the TIG torch. Doesn't come with this setup, but I'll be able to do that in the future.
Well, you have to send me a link.
Yeah, I definitely will. I'll put a link to the one I got here in the show notes, and you know, we may even have to. I'll put in a call to Forney, and they can come on the show and tell us some stuff. Maybe give me a lesson here on the podcast,
Yeah.
and I'm sure
I've
some
got
others would benefit from it.
I've got a stick welder, but I hate using it because
Yeah.
I hate stick welding. So
Yep. Yeah, I borrowed a stick welder from a friend a couple years ago to fix an elliptical machine. The thing had broken, and
yeah,
boy, talk about some ugly welds. But it
yeah.
held.
Oh yeah,
Another thing, you know. So, you know, one of the things jokingly everybody says, if you buy a welder, you better buy a really good grinder as well. So I've got the grinder, I got the flapper wheels and grinding discs and everything. We're good there.
or just practice enough to where you don't need the grinder.
Exactly.
Well,
Exactly.
well, yeah. So then you get in this situation you might, it might be a horrible weld, but strong. But then when you grind it to make it look better, you just made it weaker. So
Yeah. Better to just be a
it's
good
a double-edged
welder.
sword there. You just went, oh, damn it.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, you need
Why does
the
it keep
grinder.
breaking? Well, I keep trying to make trying to make it look pretty, and it keeps breaking.
Well, I mean, you'll need the grinder anyway just to prep your surfaces, but
Yeah.
you know,
Yep, and so I'll have to scavenge some practice material. Good thing is Army installations are full of scrap metal. I don't know why that is, but there's always a lot of it around.
it always seems like it's bigger than a 1/4 inch though, too.
It's true. It's true. Either way, I'm going to get some practice and maybe teach my kids, especially
Yeah.
my girls, because everything that I've ever seen is I don't know if there's any science to it or not, but you know, some reports are that girls are better welders than boys. So we're going to put it to the test. And
Yeah.
you know,
I think it has to do with patience.
that's probably it. Just the approach to learning.
Well, that and attention to detail and
Sure.
all that good stuff.
So my 14-year-old daughter will not just be teaching me how to sew, but also how to weld.
There you go.
I think that's the real takeaway from all of this.
But then she's got a hell of a career ahead of her.
Yeah. Stitch welds and stitch. She's got
Yep.
it down. All right. Well, I've got other project, but we'll save that for another show when I get closer to actually having those completed. So the next thing we've got teed up is going to tie into what we talked about before is an article on offroadextreme.com about rubber versus polyurethane bushings. So, Rich, do you have any experience with the two varieties? Have you landed on opinion which you like more?
I do like poly more. The biggest thing I've always wondered, you know, rubber seems more susceptible to temperature changes. You know, if you've ever driven your vehicle, well, especially when you drove your vehicle in Alaska, compared to now when you're driving it in the desert with rubber bushings, you notice a lot more. There's a big difference there, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if poly is as susceptible to the temperature changes. I'm sure they are, but I don't think it's as bad.
Well, I think that's because the poly is much harder at a wider range of temperatures. So
Right.
you really don't notice the difference. But for sure, like a rubber motor mount is going to give you a much better, much more comfortable ride. The vibrations aren't going to come through the same as, you know, a really high durometer polyurethane. Just because, just the natural, the properties of it. You know, it's going to
Right.
absorb those vibrations. So looking at this article, it says that, you know, there's a lot of advantages to the polyurethane, and essentially they're less prone to deflection, crushing, compression, which translates to those increases in performance and durability. It's also more resistant to oils and chemicals and abrasion, and of course weathering, like we're talking about, versus the rubber. But the reason that vehicle manufacturers use rubber in the stock configuration is because it's a great isolator, and it provides that more silent and smooth operation of whatever it's using to buffer the vibrations. So at some point, you kind of have to make a decision. Do you want it to last longer, or do you want it to be more comfortable? So that's kind of where I've landed.
I'll take the last longer.
Yeah, see, I
Well,
find
the
my...
manufacturers definitely want the comfort and the expense aspect of it. That's definitely what they're looking at. So,
yeah, I mean, I know for a fact when I switched over to a rubber rod end link for my suspension stuff, it dramatically changed the ride quality, which translated to more confidence in driving obstacles at higher speeds, and just being able to. It's more predictable. So, I know there's a lot of benefits to polyurethane, but what I would caution somebody is don't just throw out all the rubber bushings that you have in favor of the polyurethane, because they have different physical properties, and you may not enjoy the ride quality that you get. It may last longer, so you have that hard, uncomfortable ride for longer, if that's what you want. Just something to think about. So,
and it depends on the application too. Just because you don't have to go all poly all over.
Yeah.
Depending on where you want to use it, you can mix and match. So.
Yep. Yeah, like I've still got poly bushings on the transfer case support or the transmission support. So that's certainly not going anywhere. But I definitely went for the rubber on the engine mounts. But this is, that was a rubber replaced rubber. But the rubber that came out was bad. They might as well not even have been there. Man, did you guys see those pictures of it? Like the center bushing just fell right out. Yeah. And they're all baked salt. Oh, that was bad. So maybe not a great comparison. But
well, no, I think it is because but see, you're not in the same temperatures and conditions you were in, like New York, and then all the states you've lived in and that you've taken that vehicle to have gone through all those transitions. So now if you were able to go back and now do that same trip with poly than rubber, I think you can't do that comparison because you're never going to be able to do that exact thing again. I can pretty much guarantee when you're done with your military service and you guys move back up to Canada, you're going to be able to test that theory with the polyurethane and the cold.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going back to Canada, but I'll go through Canada. But yeah, we'll see how that goes. And I may decide eventually to swap over to poly, like when I really have had it and I'm done turning wrenches and just want it to last forever. But I imagine as long as I own an off-road vehicle, it's going to require work. So, all right.
If you don't, you're fooling yourself.
Yeah, definitely lying to myself. That or I'm just buying new vehicles every time it's time for an oil change. I know people like that too.
Oh, jeez.
Well, I think that's it for this one. So we want to remind you that we are proud members of the 4x4 Radio Network. Make sure to head over to 4x4radio.com. You'll find that long playlist of all the shows on the 4x4 Radio Network. Hit play there, and you can check out the Center Steer podcast, learning about Land Rovers, Jeep Talk Show, and On the Trail with Kevin and Scott. Jeep Talk Show is, not with Kevin and Scott. That's Tony and Josh and those guys. But it's still all Jeeps. You know what I'm talking about. And, of course, Cody and Matt on Trail Chasers. Don't want to miss that one. Thanks again to Artemis Overland Hardware for helping this show continue. Be sure to check them out on Facebook, Instagram, and of course at artemisoverland.com, or go say hello in their new showroom there. It's pretty impressive. They've got all the rooftop tents and a bunch of the gear set up so you can actually, maybe they won't let you cook on the stoves, but you'll at least get to see them there. And if you got any feedback on this show, head over to the 4x4podcast.com/156, or you can send us an email, the 4x4podcast@yahoo.com. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at the 4x4 podcast on all of those. Voicemail and text messages, if you'd like to do that, 719-924-5337. We've got the speak pipe, so you can leave a message right through the show notes, and we'll get that. But for now, it is time to hit the trails or get in the garage and do some projects. Either way, tread lightly, God bless, and stay safe while exploring your world.